This is CBC Vancouver News.
A full-on transit strike hits the eastern Fraser Valley.
I need to take Uber every day.
I can't walk here or anything.
The impact and what workers are asking for.
There was a lot of community backlash.
After weeks of public outcry, Burnaby City Council cancels plans to build an organic waste facility in a park. And the Sikh community calls for a hate crime investigation after a group assault on an international student in Kelowna. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. Dan is away tonight. We start in the eastern Fraser Valley, where commuters are feeling the brunt of day one of a full-fledged transit strike. With only the most basic of services running, those on the picket line say they're prepared to stay, forcing commuters to find another way of getting around. Michelle Gassoub reports.
For students at the University of the Fraser Valley, it was a tricky and sometimes expensive commute to class.
So it's very hard for me and I need to take Uber every day.
Wow, and how much does that end up costing you?
Near about $15 for one ride. That's expensive.
Around 200 workers that keep Fraser Valley buses moving are on strike, bringing transit in Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Mission, Agassiz and Hope to a halt. With negotiations between the union and First Transit stalled, bus operators traded their shifts for the picket lines.
Any other driver in the region, they are making 32% more than us. So wage parity and a pension plan, because we don't have any pension plan at all.
That 32% difference with other drivers, a sticking point for QP 561's chief negotiator.
It's got to the point for our members that in order to provide for their families and for their livelihood, they had to take this step.
First Transit said in a statement it's proposed a 16% wage increase over 5 years, calling the offer a significant wage increase on par with trends across the province and the sector. But O'Neill says the proposed wages are years behind other operators and that the company, which is American, hasn't budged on providing pensions.
They said that they didn't want to negotiate in the media, but then they throw out some misleading statements.
Handy Dart service continues specifically for people who need to travel for cancer treatment or dialysis, but others who rely on it are out of luck.
It kind of sucks for people that have to take the bus, that don't have cars.
This woman usually depends on Handy Dart to travel to her volunteer work. Still, she supports the drivers, some of whom she's known for years.
I know a lot of them, like Debbie, she's a good bus driver. She should get money the same way everybody else does.
A sentiment many seem to share.
The bus drivers should be able to get paid a good wage, right? I mean, they do a lot of work and I rely on them.
Though concerns around the long-term impact of a strike are very real.
It should be solved, otherwise it will be very tough for all the students, especially international students, because we need to go to work as well.
Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Kelowna RCMP say an international student was assaulted by a group of people at a bus stop Friday, and members of the Sikh community want it investigated as a hate crime. They tell CBC News the victim, whose name is Gagandeep Singh, was a young man from India who had been studying in Kelowna for the past year. When officers found him, he was laying on the ground, surrounded by friends who came to help. Police say a group of young women and men were teasing the victim while on the bus, and when he went to leave, he was attacked from behind. Members of the Sikh community are rallying around him. They say the attackers had taken off the victim's turban, pulled his hair, and dragged him around. Vancouver police say an officer could be off work for months after it says their cruiser was hit by some joyriding teenagers this morning. It happened near Kingsway and Tyne during the morning commute. The VPD says 2 officers were heading to a 911 call in an unmarked police car when another vehicle hit them. Investigators believe the 16-year-old driver had been doing donuts before crashing into the cop car. The young driver and 2 teenage passengers weren't hurt, but the force says one officer has head and spine injuries. The second is recovering at home. The teenage driver was arrested and could be charged with dangerous driving and driving without a license. An update to a story we brought you last night. After weeks of public outcry, Burnaby City Council has voted to cancel the plan to build an organic waste facility in Fraser Foreshore Park. But as Mira Baines reports, the mayor says climate change challenges remain.
After a weekend protest at Fraser Foreshore Park to save 21 acres of land from becoming the site of an organic waste facility, Burnaby Council voted to kill the plan.
It's carried. Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone.
Mayor Mike Hurley called a special meeting for today.
I made the decision last week that there wasn't support for the project in that location, and that was why I asked for a motion to reconsider.
Still, Hurley says canceling also creates a problem.
It will set us back a bit in our efforts to really meet our climate change targets, which are coming at us really fast. And, we can't continue to kick all the goals that we have for climate change down the road.
The facility would have processed up to 150,000 tons of organic waste annually from Burnaby and neighboring communities and businesses. It would be converted into high-quality soil. The decision was made on February 27th using an alternative process to approve it on parkland. Some residents say the alternative process didn't involve community engagement and consultation.
There was a lot of community backlash because it felt really sneaky the way that the city handled this.
It's unclear where the facility could be located in the future, but so far the city doesn't have other options on the table. Mira Baines, CBC News, Burnaby.
10 BC organizations will receive a financial boost from Ottawa to accelerate growth and help them compete on the global market.
British Columbia is fertile ground for innovative companies to grow and also to scale up. It takes people, strong networks, and platforms that foster diversity of thought. It takes skilled workers who are graduating from the top post-secondary institutions right here in our city.
More than $25 million will be given out by Pacifican to businesses across industries like Aspect Biosystems, a biotechnology company, and BBTV, a media technology firm. Today's investments are also expected to create more than 500 jobs. With the rising cost of living, British Columbians continue to feel the pinch, with more than half of the people in this province reporting an overall decline in financial stability compared to last year. That's the finding in a new poll by Angus Reid, which discovered 47% of Canadians asked are in a worse money position than they were in 2022. And over half of the people in this province say the same. More than 30% of Canadians also think things will keep getting worse into next year. These numbers come as the federal government prepares to table its budget later this month. Some encouraging news for travelers waiting months or even years to get a Nexus card. The Canada Border Services Agency is going to reopen all Nexus airport enrollment centres by late April. This is a move meant to deal with a backlog of thousands of applications due in part to a dispute over legal protections for American customs officers to be able to carry a gun while on duty on Canadian soil. Now, Canadian border agents will interview Nexus applicants separately from U.S. agents at 8 Canadian airports rather than together as they did before the pandemic. Keep in mind that means applicants will now have to complete another interview on the U.S. side of the border. The federal NDP's transport critic is tabling a private member's bill to protect air passengers from dysfunctional travel.
We need to address the major loophole that exists in the Canadian Transportation Act. That's a loophole that allows airlines to deny passengers compensation for situations that are well within their control as companies, and yet they claim are necessary because of safety.
He says current passenger protections are weak and have largely let airlines off the hook for chaotic travel seasons. He wants to introduce changes to the Canada Transportation Act, which he says would make compensation automatic for delayed or cancelled flights and shift the burden of proof from passengers to airlines. Rogers Arena says a SZA fan was asked to leave last night's concert after being warned multiple times to stop dancing in the aisles.
Vancouver, pre-show.
In a statement to CBC News, Rogers Arena says the safety of our fans is #1 priority and the aisles need to stay clear for hosts to help support anyone who may need assistance in a timely manner.
There was no performer on at the time, and everyone was just getting super hyped for SZA to come on. Everyone was trying to get to their seats. No, I did not be politely asked or be asked to stop dancing.
However, this 18-year-old on TikTok who claims that he was the guy who was kicked out of the concert denies being warned by security before being escorted out, raising the question, how much is too much when it comes to dancing at a concert?
The climate time bomb is ticking.
When we come back, climate scientists say this is the last chance to limit the Earth's warming before the damage becomes irreversible. That story is next. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. A pair of twin entrepreneurs in Ottawa are campaigning for women to embrace their curly hair. The sisters co-founded their own product line after noticing a lack of natural hair products.
So basically, this is how we do it. We would put some water, then put du démêlissant. Oh, keeps going. And then you put some gel on it.
Give me the gel.
Yes.
It's like a surgery.
Yep. Okay. My name is Manjali.
And I'm Mijin.
Hippolyte. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Well, Manjali is my twin sister, and we do everything together.
Growing up as a child, you had your natural hair braided, you went to school like that. For most of us, for most Black kids, until you reach about like almost teenage years, and then that marks the time where you're like starting to be this young lady, and so you put the relaxer on and you're really happy, you're looking like everybody else. At one point when I started to work, I felt even more like I was not like the others, and I wanted to go back to fully accepting who I am. And to me, it was also about my hair. There was a few stories about people that started their own brands, and so she decided she was going to take some classes on how to create natural products.
Formulate
natural products. And since I was the hairstylist, we were like, okay, I think it works. So let me ask my clients if I can use it on their hair, and they were too happy. They're like, yeah, sure, go ahead.
So right now I'm using the conditioner to detangle over here. I just want to make sure that everything is thoroughly detangled. It's really important.
And so we started to use it on their hair, and I was like, Mijin, it's ready, let's do this, it's ready.
Frisé is curly in French, and so we decided that we're gonna make it a little bit different and put the Z instead of an S.
Acceptance is beauty, because we've accepted what we have, and so we're happy. No matter what texture you have, you will no longer run away from the rain. It'll just be like, it's okay, it's okay. It's okay, my hair will be fine because it's curly and I left it the way it was meant to be.
The UN has delivered yet another dire warning on climate change. The window to avert the worst effects of global warming is fast closing. As Jayla Bernstein tells us, the report says the planet is just a decade away from reaching a critical tipping point.
The latest UN report on climate change is a dire warning about the closing window in terms of being able to address climate change before we see irreversible damage done. The report was released today by the IPCC. That's the UN body, the authority really on climate science. And what the authors say is that we are likely to reach 1.5 degrees warming above pre-industrial levels in the near future. The question really is, will we hit that number and then blow past it to see the worst case scenario, or will we hit 1.5 degrees warming and then go back down? And scientists say it really rides on whether or not we start cutting carbon emissions now.
The climate time bomb is ticking. But today's IPCC report is a how-to guide to defuse the climate time bomb. It is a survival guide for humanity. As it shows, the 1.5 degree limit is achievable, but it will take a quantum leap in climate action.
The UN Secretary General is calling for deep and rapid cuts to greenhouse gas emissions this decade, and he called out developed nations in particular, saying they should be aiming to hit net zero as close as possible to 2040. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
The stark reality of the global climate crisis is plain to see across the southwestern U.S. Millions of people face a potential water crunch after 2 decades of drought and increased demand. CBC's international climate correspondent Susan Ormiston is in Nevada, looking at the hard choices states are grappling with as a major reservoir dries up.
Consider Bruce Nelson's predicament, running a boating business on America's largest freshwater reservoir. Big, stunning, and shrinking. The white markings, so-called bathtub rings, reveal how much Lake Mead has dropped, over 50 meters.
You know, we have a telltale sign because of hard water deposits, but if we didn't have that and that was all brown, nobody would have an idea that this lake was low.
But it is, hovering near record lows, the Hoover Dam allowing less water downstream, an alarming sign of a stubborn drought threatening water supply to tens of millions of Americans.
Drought with climate change being what it seems to be, you get people scared, and we have to change. We live in the desert. We have to make sure that we are being water cautious.
The flow from the Colorado River is dramatically reduced, forcing a hard recalculation of who gets how much water when there's less. The 7 states which depend on this water must agree to large cuts to consumption this spring, or the U.S. government will impose them.
2000 to 2022 is the driest 23-year period on record for the Colorado River.
Colby Pellegrino works for the Southern Nevada Water Authority.
We don't know what the future holds in terms of climate change. There's a very good chance that what we're experiencing today, and considering historic drought, could be the historic wet period of the next 100 years, which is quite scary. So I think not only are the nation's eyes on us, but the world's eyes are on us.
There's no ignoring the signs. Once sunken boats, beached, even exposed human remains, this old marina had to relocate here as the water levels dropped. The national park's ramp to the boat launch, it's like a runway now.
So 20 years ago, though, we would have seen water way higher here.
We'd be underwater right here, basically.
Park Superintendent Mike Gauthier has to keep adapting services, knowing the reservoir could drop further.
And think of it as a cocktail glass, so to speak. You've got canyons and the rivers at the bottom. So as it fills, the glass gets full and you have more water at the top. But as it goes down, it declines a little faster.
The looming fear is Lake Mead could reach what's called dead pool. So low, water can't flow over the dam.
There's a lot of smart minds working hard to solve this problem, and there's a lot of hope. It's just going to take some changes, and change is hard for people.
Lake Mead is a barometer of the difficult decisions ahead.
The eastern suburb of Mumbai is home to a mountain of rubbish. It's not a unique problem for this city, and the Indian government is promising to get rid of such eyesores. But the sprawling hills of garbage allow some people to earn a meager income. As Salima Shivji reports, there are also proving to be a source of danger to their health.
This is one of India's waste mountains, Deonar, the oldest, here for nearly 100 years, and it is massive, 18 stories high in many places, sprawling all around this area, curving around this neighborhood, more than 2.5 times the size of Vatican City. And there are more than 16 million tons of garbage here, dumped here over decades, and that really has severe health consequences for those living here in these neighborhoods in the shadow of this waste mountain. There is also a whole ecosystem, people really living off the waste that's gathered here on the mountain. A network of garbage pickers that sift through everything, looking for anything, plastic, bits of metal that they can sell and make a profit, all for their livelihoods. People like Johanna. She says if she misses one day of picking through the waste here, that means a day without any food for her family, no food to feed her 3 children. She did have 3 other children as well, 3 who died, one of tuberculosis, another of pneumonia. She says because of living in the shadow of this waste mountain, all of the toxic fumes that come out of this decomposing waste, and when they're around it all the time. It's a significant issue here in these neighborhoods that have sprung up around the mountain over decades. There is a much higher prevalence of tuberculosis and other illnesses.
You are living with waste almost as a everyday thing. It's an everyday danger. This is the ward where there is the highest proportion of tuberculosis and multi-drug resistant tuberculosis at that. The proportion of urinary tract infections is very high amongst women.
India's government has promised to tackle this massive problem, with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying that he wants all of the waste mountains across the country to be gone within a few years, turned into either treatment plants or greener zones. But critics do say while that is a good promise, it is a massive task that will take an immense effort. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Here is a live shot of the Georgia Viaduct. Johanna will be with us next for your full forecast.
A few peace protesters remain vigilant outside the U.S. Embassy, looking for support and keeping up hope. But across town, 2 men who know the chances for peace as well as anyone did not appear so confident.
In the case that we will have an intervention, let us pray that it will be a short intervention and that we will pay attention to the follow-up after the intervention.
I share with the Secretary General my hope now that it will be as short as war as possible.
For months, millions have gathered around the world, hoping to prevent war from happening at all. 10,000 of them gathered in Vancouver on Saturday. Many insisted if they shouted loud and long and with enough voices, they would be heard.
We're saying no to George W. Bush, no to Tony Blair, and no to this war of aggression.
And on Sunday, another 500 gathered, solemn and resolute in their demand for peace. But it's a demand that will go unheeded, according to Ghali, whether it comes from members of the UN or from people on the street.
When you are a superpower, when you are inclined not to respect diplomacy, you don't need diplomacy.
And he says if the U.S. decides it doesn't need the UN, it will not just be attacking Iraq, but the strength of the Council as well.
This will be certainly a violation of the Charter of the United Nations and will contribute to the discreditation or the weakness of the United Nations.
But this small group of protesters remains undeterred and insists even if they can't stop a war, they won't admit defeat. Jean DeVries, CBC News, Vancouver.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions.
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Well, Johanna, it was the first day of spring, and I wish for a little bit more sun, but will the rain continue?
Janella, we have more sunny side of spring in the forecast ahead. Yeah, for our first full week of spring, it's going to be a good one. I know we had a bit of a taste of a perfect spring day this weekend. Showers return today. Let me show you why on the satellite and radar. A little bit of a disturbance, a low pressure system just sitting off the west coast there of the island, sort of dragging in that cloud across the southwest. So not all of BC seeing the cloud today, but really coastal sections getting that as the cloud wraps around the low. And we're still looking at that risk of showers over the next few hours and tomorrow morning, but this is what's building in from the east. High pressure, places like Prince George, the Peace. You saw that today in the form of sunshine, and that's what will sort of push out the clouds over the next 12 hours. So taking you through the overnight, waking up tomorrow to some cloud and possibly a few showers out there. But if you're sort of planning for the day, plan for the second half to be sunny and warm. We'll be hitting those double-digit temperatures again, which will feel much warmer when we see the sunshine in through the afternoon. And sunshine we get to keep for Wednesday as well, and for most of the province. You can see things clear out through Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm pausing you Wednesday night because that's the next system that'll move in. You can already see it hitting the north coast Wednesday night. That little Pacific system will slide down in through Metro Vancouver for Thursday. So that's when the showers are back. Thursday, lingering through Friday and Saturday, but I think we'll see some sun back as well for the end of the week. Lots of warm temperatures, a good couple degrees above seasonal across the interior, places like Kelowna, Vernon, all hitting the low teens. Prince Rupert taking the showers for us, but you'll get the sun back on Wednesday. So all in all, not too shabby. I think it's nice to see the double digits for a few more days, and we're sort of early enough in the spring season. We don't quite have to worry about the freshet, but I'll keep my eye on those snowpacks. Showers, as I mentioned, Thursday, a little showery for the weekend, but Janella, I think we can find some sunny breaks in there. It's all in all, not too bad.
Well, I would definitely take all the rain showers with those milder temperatures. It has felt so great to not have to wear my winter jacket any longer.
I hear ya.
Thanks, Johanna.
You're welcome.
That is your late news for Monday. Thank you so much for watching. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts at 5 a.m. Have a great night.